نحمده ونصلي على رسوله الكريم أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يسألونك عن الخمر والميسر قل فيهما إثم كبير ومنافع للناس وإثمهما أكبر من نفعهما ويسألونك ماذا ينفقون قل العفو كذلك يبين الله لكم الآيات لعلكم تتفكرون في الدنيا والآخرة. Respectful honorable friends, the verse that I've just recited to you is a continuation of the verse that we had done previously in last week's session. In this verse, the Sahaba Kiram radiallahu ta'ala anhum had asked and questioned Nabi Kareem sallallahu alayhi wa sallam with regards to two things. One was khamar and maisir. Khamar, intoxicants; maisir, gambling. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala replied by saying that قُلْ فِيهِمَا إِثْمٌ كَبِيرٌ وَمَنَافِعُ لِلنَّاسِ, that in it there is إِثْمٌ كَبِير, there is major sin, وَمَنَافِعُ لِلنَّاسِ, and with it there is benefits for mankind. وَإِثْمُهُمَا أَكْبَرُ مِنْ نَفْعِهِمَا, but the harms and the sins outweigh the benefits. The benefits are less than the evil and the harms of these two things. Now last week we did the aspect of khamar, of intoxicants. The other thing along with khamar that the Sahaba questioned, and something that was very common amongst the Arabs, was maisir. Maisir, another word for it is qimar, which we call in our language gambling. The literal meaning of maisir is to distribute, and yasir is one who distributes. It means to distribute or to divide. The reason why maisir is utilized for gambling is because this is exactly what happens where people's possessions or wealth is divided. During the days of Jahiliyyah, prior to Islam, there were various different forms of maisir gambling that were common among the Arabs. One form that was common was that they would get a camel, and then on the camel itself they would divide various parts of the camel. So they would mark off, this part is on this person's name, that part on his name, etc. And then they would draw lots. But their drawing lots were arrows. They would put arrows into the sand, and on the arrows they would put a person's name. Those who were present, if there's 10, 15 of them, they would put their names on an arrow, and they would put some other arrows which wouldn't have any names on it. These arrows would then be put into the sand, and then somebody would then pull out the arrows. If arrows came out with the name of a person, then he was free. But if on a certain person's name the arrow was taken out which was blank, then that person would not get a share from the camel, and on top of it he would have to pay for the entire camel. So the person who lost, he would have to pay for the entire camel. Now the Arabs, one thing that they would do is that the camel itself they wouldn't utilize for themselves, but they would then give it off in charity. So the meat itself they would give to the poor, but in this way they would decide who has to pay for it. Now obviously the Arabs didn't think anything wrong of it, but rather they thought it to be virtuous because they were giving the meat to the poor. So they regarded this to be something good, that we're doing this, but at least in this manner the poor are getting something in return. So this was very common. In the same way, there were other forms of gambling wherein, for example, they would pay some money and then they would take a pebble and then they would throw the pebble on a few items. Whichever item the pebble would fall on, that person then gets that. And if he would miss, then obviously he wouldn't get anything at all. Sounds common, doesn't it? That's how far it goes back. Or they would have another form wherein they would pay to get a turn, and there would be certain items, and the first person who quickly runs and touches any item, whatever he touches, that belongs to him. But he's paid something beforehand to do, obviously, this competing. In the same way, small children, they would also gamble with walnuts and other sticks, and they would have their own deals, etc. Like in today's time, might do with marbles. You put 2 marbles, you win 3, 4 marbles. So gambling was a major pastime. So the Sahaba who realized that obviously intoxication is something that is harmful, they also thought that gambling, although they were doing it in a good form with good intention, but they also realized that obviously in it somebody loses out. That one person whose name wasn't pulled out, or under his name a blank arrow was pulled out, he now has to pay for the entire camel. It might be a case wherein he can't afford it, he's poor, but then he would still have to make sure that he pays for it. Wherever he got the money from was irrelevant, but he would have to pay for it. So they asked Nabi Kareem Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam with regards maisir as well, gambling. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala clarified it by mentioning that ithmun kabir wa manafi'u linnas. It has benefits. Obviously the benefits in this form of gambling was that the poor would gain from it. In today's time we'd also say the national lottery also has its benefits, because a lot of the national lottery funds goes towards various different projects and various committee works and these type of things. So for that also people will say, well, there are benefits. And Allah Ta'ala says, وَمَنَعْفُ النَّاسِ, there's benefits, there will be those people who will benefit from it. And an individual himself will benefit. I don't know how much lotto tickets do cost. Anybody knows? Pound? Just a pound. So obviously a person, if it's benefit for a person, he buys a lotto ticket for just £1, and then if he hits the jackpot or whatever the numbers come out for him, he can end up winning 7, 8, how many odd millions of pounds. So obviously for him there is benefit in it. He just spent £1 and he became a millionaire from it. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that إِثْمُهُمَا أَكْبَرُ مِنْ نَفْعِهِمَا, the harms of it are much greater than its benefits. Why? Because in doing so, wealth is unduly taken from people and given to others. The poor person, if he is poor, if he cannot afford it, he would have to pay for the camel, and then it will be distributed amongst the poor. So it will be taken from one side and given to somebody else. And then in gambling itself, it has an effect just as khamar does. Khamar, an intoxicant, when a person is now intoxicated, he wants more and more and more. Even though now he can't handle the amount, but he still wants more. In the same way, when a person gambles, if he loses once, now his pride is at stake, he puts more on. Then he puts more on. He loses that round also, more. He increases the stakes, he keeps on increasing, until now he loses totally wherein now he has absolutely nothing at all. And then what happens is, because he doesn't have the money to pay it off, now he has to start giving his possessions. So now he gives away his car, he gives away his house, to that extent where people have to even give away their own wives. These are the things that come about through maisir. People lose out greatly financially. Major burden occurs on a person financially through the evils of maisir, gambling. Now we need to understand what is the definition of gambling. What types of transactions fall under the category of maisir and which are just normal forms of transactions. The definition of gambling is wherein a person undertakes such a transaction wherein there is equal possibility of loss and gain. This is the definition of gambling, wherein a person is faced with the equal possibility of loss and gain. For example, something that isn't gambling. A person goes to a shop and he sees an item there which is priced at £20. So now what does he do? He gives £20. Now when he gives the £20, nothing is at stake, because he's going to give the £20 and he's going to get an item that is also worth £20. So he hasn't lost out there at all. He knows what he's purchasing and he's getting the value for what he has given. Gambling is wherein there is equal possibility of gain and loss. For example, somebody has a bet with another person that if it rains today, maybe a silly example, anybody will be in that different. For example, a person says to another person, if it rains today, then I owe you owe me £100, or if it doesn't rain, I owe you £100. Now, when a person makes such type of bet, so on something that's still to occur, that if it rains, either you give £100 or I give £100. So at that time, there's equal chances of loss and gain, because nobody knows what's going to happen. You don't know, there's nothing fixed at all. So both parties are in that position where there's equal, either you're going to gain or you're going to lose. And obviously if it does rain, then the person who has to give, he gives his £100 to the other person. Now what has happened is he, without giving anything, he has gained and the other person has lost. This is what gambling is. So one of the forms of gambling is where there's equal chances of loss and equal chances of gaining. Another form of gambling is wherein the item or the thing that a person is gambling for is obscure, where a person is ignorant of what he is getting or what he is purchasing. This is also regarded to be maisir. For example, somebody has a box and you do not know what's in the box, and somebody now says to you, give me £20 and you'll get whatever's in the box. This is also gambling, because a person will be given £20 or £10, £5 for the box, and in it there might just be a couple of sweets. There might be something that's just worth £1, £2, but you are giving £5 to enter into the prize wherein you're getting something which is less than what you have paid for. This is also a form of gambling. So from this we realize that such types of one-sided bets are a gamble. Two-sided bets, wherein both people are betting on something. A one-sided bet is okay. For example, somebody says to another person that if it rains today, I'll give you £100. Because I bet you if it rains today, I give you £100, or you give me £100, and that's it. One-sided bet. Not that you give and I also give, if from both sides. If it's a one-sided bet, it is fine. Or somebody tells somebody that if you run 100 meters in under 10 seconds, and I'll give you £100, and that's it. There's no win or lose here. And if that person does it, the person gives him £100, because that's just a form of a qasam, an oath, a promise. Wherein if you do achieve this, then I'll give you this. So that isn't gambling, it is just a one-sided bet. This type of bet is halal. From this we realize that obviously the national lottery is not permissible and all other forms of lottery. Why? Because here also a person, he is buying a ticket for £1. So he's buying the ticket for £1, but he may lose out. There is equal possibility of him gaining and equal possibility of him not gaining. He'll either win or he'll lose. If he loses his £1, and if he wins much more than that. And a person who is addicted to gambling, he probably loses more than ever win. Because a person who doesn't, who's habitual, and obviously when a person sees somebody, a dustbin man or somebody winning so many millions, person becomes tempted, oh, what is it, just £1? For £1 I'll become a millionaire for £1. But what he doesn't realize is how many times he spends the pound. It's not just a one-off, he did it once and then thought he'd become a millionaire, he didn't say, okay, never mind, forget about it. But how many times does he keeps on paying the £1, and that if a person, one who is into the lottery, then at the end of the year was to accumulate how much they spend for nothing at all, just for buying the ticket, they realize how much they could have spent, have earned. So rather, they would have become a millionaire by not paying the lottery, or rather just putting that £1 aside. In today's time we have various forms of prizes, competitions, raffles, etc. These also, if a person has to pay to enter into any competition, this is also gambling. For example, there's a prize draw, but to enter into the prize draw, a person has to pay a sum. So you get a nice letter that you can become a millionaire, you can win this car or this holiday or that amount. But to enter, you have to give your name and that, and you have to send in a check or something, or £5 or £1, £2 or something. Or they ask you to call a specific number, and that number they are charging you more than a normal phone call. By which when you pay, you are paying extra than you're supposed to be doing. This is also gambling, because there's equal opportunity of you winning and not winning. If however somebody enters your name for free, you don't have to do anything at all, just give your name and your name might be drawn out from some prize draw or something, that is allowed. But if you are going to pay, and then if you win, you're going to win a larger sum than what you've paid, this falls under gambling. Similarly, a person enters, it is a fun fair somewhere, and the person is standing there 5p or 10p, 50p a turn, wherein then whatever you win, you might win something, that also is not allowed. Wherein you're paying him 5p to take the turn, and then whatever you win something which costs 2, 3, 4, whatever pounds it does, this is also under gambling. However, if there is a place wherein you're told that you have to pay an entrance fee, and after that everything else is for free, then that would be allowed. Because when you're paying now, you're just paying to enter into the area or the vicinity, whatever. For example, there's a fair somewhere, but there's an entrance fee. After that you don't pay to enter into any of the other competitions, then that would be allowed, but on condition when you pay the money at the entrance, you have the intention that you're paying only to be entered into it, into the area. Otherwise, if you have the intention, I'm giving this and then I might win a few things also by it, that will fall under gambling as well. Have you all understood? These are the various forms of gambling that are around. In this, insurance also is included into this, where a person pays his whatever his premium is, and then there's equal chance, either he'll get it back or he won't get it back. Either he just, nothing happens, no accident, nothing happens at all, and he then basically he's lost what he's paid, and they gain from it. And there might be a possibility wherein, yes, something does happen and he gains from it, or there might be a chance wherein he now gets something which is much greater, larger than that in number. Because something which is also a form of gambling and riba, interest, riba and these is wherein a person gives X amount of wealth and he gets more than that back in return. So this isn't a form of transaction, but it is also a form of maisir, of gambling. So the easiest definition of gambling is wherein the stakes are equal. wherein a person knows either he's going to gain or he's going to lose. Any such form of a transaction will be included into gambling. Have you understood this? And where it says open, straightforward transaction, where you know that you're paying this much and you're getting so much, then that is allowed. Similarly, you find a lot of times you might buy some cereals or some chocolate bars or crisps and that, on which they might have tokens, and that you send this token, you'll get a prize or something. There also, what is very, very important is, if a person, a bar of chocolate is 30p, and that's its standard price, 30 pence. And you're told that if you buy that bar of chocolate for 30 pence as normal, and you just send off the token and you get a price, that would be permissible. Because you're paying 30p, which is the value of the item that you're purchasing. Okay? However, if they have such type of competition, but they raise the price of the item, so that because for them to fund the item, the price, now the chocolate bar becomes 35p. So what happens now is 30p you are paying for the chocolate bar, but the excess 5 or 10 pence that you are paying to be entered into the competition, then if you win a prize, this will be gambling. So these forms of tokens, and that will only be permissible if the merchandise, whatever it is on its normal street price. If it is raised, then what normally happens is you are paying more. As you find a lot of times, which is very, very important, radio shows may have a call-in competition that the first person to call, whoever calls and gets the answer right wins this or that. There also a person has to be very cautious, because when you call, if the call is for free, if phone this number is for free, then it's fine, because then you're not paying anything, there's no loss there at all, you're just phoning in and you might win. But if it now becomes all of a sudden a premium rate or 1p a minute kind of thing, or if the radio show now raise the price for those calls to make their income or to pay off for the gift price, whatever, then it won't be permissible for a person to enter in this type of a competition. In fact, a lot of times these type of things happens. Person phones and then he finds he doesn't win anything at all, rather he just wins promises, and his phone bill also is greatly increased because obviously they have to make money somehow for the prize. This is also then included into gambling. Have you all understood? Similarly, sometimes you have where you have to post things. There's a different opinion with regards to that, because some are of the opinion that when you do post your name or the coupon or whatever, you're still you're paying for the stamp. Some of that opinion, well, you're not paying for the item, you're just paying for the stamp, and that's just for the delivery of the letter. But if they ask you to send a spare self-addressed envelope or a spare stamp, etc., then that will also be included into gambling. With regards to these things, khamar and gambling, and it makes sense for Allah mentioning both of them together, because both khamar and maisir are a form of an intoxication. If a person now becomes intoxicated, he keeps on putting on and on his stakes because he can't face the fact of losing, or because of his desire to win more and more, he keeps on putting more and more on. And you'll find that the national lottery in this country, this is also a scheme wherein they're making a lot of money. People may think that, well, the person who wins so many millions, but then also think about the times when people don't win and how many millions of people are buying the lottery also, how much obviously they are making on it. We have a great population, I'm sure few millions pay pound towards it, so for every turnover or however it works, every week or whatever, they are making so many millions itself by means of taking from the people, and they are making their profits from it. And these are things that people do not realize. All they think is they look at the idea of, well, just paying £1, and if you're lucky then you'll win so much. And I mean, you'll find so many Muslims also who, if the national lottery is also there, but they'll also be on the game machines, where you think just put a 5p or a 10p and maybe the thing will move, and then a lot of coins will fall out at the bottom, or put a few coins in and just pull the lever and jackpot and all these things. But what happens is how much a person loses in it. He'll start off, well, 10p, what's 10p or 50p? Might be more than that now in today's times. Before it used to be probably 2p or 5p. 50p or £1, whatever he puts in, he doesn't get anything. And then he puts it in, he wins £5. So, well, this is good. I put £1 and put £5 in. And then he puts one coin again, he loses that, another coin, another coin, another coin. Eventually the £5 that he gained, he lost that, and on top of that he loses another 5, 10 that he keeps on putting. So you find it becomes an addiction at the time. Person who wins and a person who loses. He won't just say, okay, that's it, I'm going home now. But the more he wins, the more he loses. Because the more he wins, the more greed enters into him, and now he starts putting more and more and more in. So what he did win, which he could just put in his pocket and gone home with it, now he loses that also because of his addiction. Addiction to want to gamble. That's why you find so many old people that are addicted to the bingo. They can't walk in the home from one corner to the other corner, but they can walk to the bingo places, and whatever happens, that shouldn't be missed. Going to the bingo becomes part and parcel of their lives. This is also a form of gambling. Similarly, the pools. It's already down to football season, the pools will start, where people are now sitting there with the pool, etc. All these is forms of gambling. Horse racing, stakes. It's so unfortunate that you even find so many Muslims who are actively involved in gambling with regards to horse racing itself. You always hear the name of Sheikh Muhammad, supposed to be an Arab, and he's one of the main guys when it comes to horse racing and gambling. Horse racing on its own is fine, but to gamble on it, that isn't permissible whatsoever. And with regards to just gambling, and with regards to national lottery, dear friends, you'll find there are many. To us, you may think, yeah, it makes sense to us, and we might not be doing it, but there are so many Muslims there, dear friends, who are involved in the national lottery. There are a lot of them that are doing it, and even you'll have so many others who are also going into the bingo places. You find so many also on the machines. And we find it so many times, you walk in somewhere, you just find somebody just bought a ticket and he walks around and he gets the shock of his life when he sees you there. Isn't it? So there are so many Muslims, dear friends, who are involved in this. Whereas Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, over various few stages, has made khamr and maisir haram. And in it, dear friends, a person's wealth is also protected. Whereas Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that instead of throwing away your money in this manner, keep it for yourselves, utilize it on yourselves, and rather give it to the poor than just wasting it in this manner. And then, dear friends, there are so many people who lose a lot of money, then fall into so much debts and that they don't know what to do, and then they go to those extents where then they might put life insurance upon themselves and their wives and families, and then they'll organize them to be killed and that, so that they can get the money for it. And these things will happen. While in South Africa there was a case wherein a Muslim couple went missing for a short period of time, and it was the month of Ramadan as well, and they had few small children, mother and father missing, and it was on the news and everything because it was Muslims at the time. So it became well known in that, and then people feeling sorry for the kids that it's going to be Eid, so they just try to eat and the parents are missing what's happened and that. And then they found that the husband, he just all of a sudden came onto the road asking for help, and he was beaten up, and the wife was then strangled and killed. So afterwards they all had sympathy for him and that. But then when and he mentioned that they were hijacked, and then the hijackers beat him up and he managed to escape and his wife was killed. This was the case that he had shown. But after a while, after they started investigating in that, they found out that he had an addiction to gambling, due to which he fell into great amount of debt. And he was a doctor, and his wife was also a doctor. Both of them were doctors. He fell into great amount of debt. And his wife had life insurance of X amount of 100,000 rands, whatever there. So he had then staged the entire thing. Because he now didn't have the money to pay off his debts, he staged the whole thing where he paid a few people to grab hold of them and just hit him and beat him up a bit, by which to just hospitalize him mildly, so that he is innocent and have his own wife killed, so that then he can inherit from her life insurance or policy, etc., and he can then pay off his debts. This is not non-Muslims we're talking about, this is Muslims. So here, dear friends, he had no value for his wife at all. He was willing to lose his wife, take the life of his wife just to pay off his debts. And this is what happens. The person then becomes desperate, the people are now asking, demanding for the money, then where does he get it from? So a person resorts to these types of actions. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has protected the Muslims from this by making the khamar and maisir haram on a person. They are linked also on those basis that a lot of times when a person is now intoxicated, now he starts gambling where he doesn't even realize what he's doing. He doesn't say, okay, put 1,000 on it, put 2,000 on it. But he doesn't even realize what he's doing. And the person, the bookie, he'll make sure to add more and more into his drink also. Another on the house, on the house. Because he's doing his work also, and then he's telling him there's high stakes on it, there's odd favors, and this odds on it, this is not so his work, and he doesn't know what he's saying, and so okay, put another grand onto it. And in this way the bookie is making a feast out of everything. So when a person is intoxicated, he starts gambling, and in this manner so much evil comes out of it. So فِيهِمَا إِثْمٌ كَبِيرٌ, there's great sins in it, وَمَنَافِعُ لِلنَّاسِ, the benefits for mankind in it that he wins, but وَإِثْمُهُمَا أَكْبَرُ مِنْ نَفْعِهِمَا, the harms of it, the sins of it outweigh the benefits. Further, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to finish off this verse, says وَيَسْأَلُونَكَ مَاذَا يُنْفِقُونَ, and they ask you with regards what they should spend. Now if you recall, just a few verses ago, the same question was asked, wherein the Sahaba had asked Nabi Kareem sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, يَسْأَلُونَكَ مَاذَا يُنْفِقُونَ, that what should we spend? There it was said that كُلْ مَا أَنْفَقْتُم مِّن خَيْرٍ, that whatever you spend of good should be for الْوَالِدَيْن, for your parents, وَالْأَقْرَبِينَ, your relatives, وَالْيَتَامَى, the orphans, وَالْمَسَاكِينَ, the poor, وَابْنِ السَّبِيلِ, and the wayfarer. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had mentioned this previously, when He had mentioned certain aspects, certain people on whom a person should spend on. Here again the same question is asked, وَيَسْأَلُونَكَ مَاذَا يُنْفِقُونَ, they ask you that what should we spend? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala replies by saying, قُلِ الْعَفْوَ, spend that which is extra. The reason the same question has been repeated is, in the previous time when it was asked, the main question of the Sahaba there was, on whom should we spend? And here, the main question was, what should we spend? So there Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala replied by saying, spend, if you want to spend on these people. And this spending was regards to nafal spending, not the farz, zakat, etc. That's different. Here when the question was asked, the Sahaba wanted to really know, as مَاذَا يُنْفِقُونَ, as in what do we spend? That when we give in charity, do we have to give this amount or that amount? Is there a fixed amount that we should give? Nabi Kareem Sallallahu says, but Allah reveals, قُلِ الْعَفْوَ, tell them to give whatever is extra. Meaning that besides zakat, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has not specified any fixed amount that a person should spend. Only in zakat it has been stipulated the 2.5%, and that also, dear friends, is the minimum. Less than that there will be nothing at all to give to the poor. That's why Hakim al-Matanwi rahimahullah mentions that if a person is so stingy that he can't even pay the 2.5%, then that's the peak of stinginess. You can't steep lower than that, because that's the lowest that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has stipulated upon a person, only 2.5%. That's why you find many people who don't know how to calculate the zakat, and a lot of times they come to me to work out how much zakat they have to pay, and then when you tell them the sum, even they get surprised that, are you sure, is that all? Because they think, oh, we have to give zakat, so they think it must be a real large chunk from our savings and that we have to give. But it's only 2.5%. So when they find out that 2.5%, that's all, I mean, like that they won't think what 2.5% is. But when you calculate and work it out, and it comes out to be such a small amount, even they are shocked and surprised, and then they go away nice and happy. They come with a lot of stress and tension that we're going to lose a lot of money here, but then they leave nice and happy. Those people should actually give some extra instead, isn't it? They'll get more reward then. Here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying that besides the zakat, مَاذَا يُنْفِقُونَ قُلِ الْعَفْوَ, give whatever you want. Previously Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself said that مَا أَنفَقْتُم مِّن خَيْرٍ, that whatever you give of goodness, min khayr, they meant whatever you give. Here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying that Qulil af, say to them, give that which is extra. That after you have seen to your family and your necessities, whatever now you have extra, whatever you can from that, give that. From Qulil af, there are actually a few Sahaba who say that Qulil af means that a person should not have any extra at all. Sayyidina Abu Zar al-Ghifari rahimahullah ta'ala is also from those category of Sahaba who from this deduce that Qulil af means that a person should not have surplus. That whatever is surplus should be given into charity. But most of them are unanimous that Qulil af means that whatever extra wealth a person has, he can give whatever he wants from it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has not specified any fixed amount. So it's not like any membership somewhere or any church or Samaritan somewhere where there's fixed that every month or annually you have to pay X amount towards the church or towards whatever foundation or whatever good. Here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala hasn't done that at all, but He says Qulil af. Each person according to his means, according to how much he has, he should give. But despite Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala making it so easy, you find, unfortunately, that the rich give less than the poor. You'll find, because it's open for normal sadaqah, for example, person goes to somebody, you're building a masjid or madrasa, there's some need for lillah or some money, because it's not zakat, then it's up to the individual how much he wants to give. There's nothing specified. So a person can give £5, a person give £500, £5,000. So you'll find a lot of times a person goes to a rich person, and that rich person will give only a fiver, he gives £5. And go to a normal middle class, working class person, and it enters into his heart, well, it's a good worthy cause, he doesn't have so much, but he'll even give at least £5 or £20. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Qulil af, give from your extra, it now means that a person according to his means should give. According to his means that if you have more, then give more. If you have less, if you give more, all the better. But if you have less, then give little. Instead of not giving at all, if you have little, then at least give from the little. It shouldn't be a case either wherein a person now thinks that because he's got very little, he's exempted, he shouldn't give whatsoever. Although besides the zakat, nothing else is first, but then too a person should still spend. Even if he has very little, he should still spend, even if it means just giving a little bit. And if a person has more to give, then he should give more, not that he now gives little because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala hasn't stipulated anything. Further he says, كَذَلِكَ يُبَيِّنُ اللَّهُ لَكُمُ الْآيَاتِ لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَفَكَّرُونَ. In this manner, Allah clarifies to you His signs, His verses, لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَفَكَّرُونَ, so that you ponder with regards it, فِي الدُّنْيَا وَالْآخِرَةِ, with regards matters of this world and the hereafter. As we find in these few verses that we've been doing, it's been where the Sahaba have asked with regards some specific ruling, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in reply has so openly mentioned to us the various rulings of these things. So it says, كَذَلِكَ, in this manner, يُبَيِّنُ اللَّهُ لَكُمُ الْآيَاتِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala clearly mentions to us, He openly, without any ambiguity, mentions His verses, He mentions what He means to us, لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَفَكَّرُونَ فِي الدُّنْيَا وَالْآخِرَةِ, so that a person, تَتَفَكَّرُونَ, he ponders with regards the things that Allah has commanded us, he ponders with regards those things which are halal and which are haram, فِي الدُّنْيَا وَالْآخِرَةِ, with regards to affairs in this world and in the hereafter, which also indicates that a believer should be such that he always تَتَفَكَّرُونَ فِي الدُّنْيَا وَالْآخِرَةِ. A believer should be one who always makes fikr, he always ponders with regards his dunya and his hereafter. Not that he just does whatever he wants to do without thinking that whether there's any benefit for him in this world or the hereafter. If he undertakes any forms of transaction, whether he thinks or not at the time that if I do undertake the transaction, is it worthwhile? Am I going to do anything good in it or with it or not? Person now has the opportunity. Now he thinks, should I gamble or not? So now he doesn't think that, okay, if I'm given £1 but I'm not losing, am I losing, am I winning? Is it halal, haram or not? If I gain in this world, do I gain or do I not gain? If I do gain, do I gain in the hereafter or not? Everything that a person does, he should tadafakkarun, ponder. That this deed that I'm going to do, this venture that I'm going to undertake, is it beneficial for my dunya and is it beneficial for my hereafter or not? This is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, and He says to us that everything has been clarified to us. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has openly mentioned to us His injunctions by which a person can realize by means of these injunctions. For example, in today's time, nobody now goes to a pub and thinks to himself, is it halal or not for me to drink? Is it permissible or not? It doesn't have to. Why? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has clearly opened it out and mentioned to us that it is not permissible. And if there are anything that a person does not know, whether it is halal or not, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have kept the ulama, the scholars of deen, who then can mention and clarify to people that whether it is halal or not. By which tadafakkarun, a person ponders. Person goes to the supermarkets or somewhere, he needs some stuff. Now instead of just seeing, this is what I want, he just goes and gets it and buys it. He tadafakkarun, he looks at it, he sees the ingredients, he thinks whether it's halal to buy it or not. If I do buy it, is it good for my dunya and akhirat or not? This is what a person should be doing at all times. Think whatever he does, fi dunya wal akhirah, and if a person does so, he'll find he'll always be on the right path. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us all the understanding of these verses. Quran Tafseer from next week will be after Maghrib Surah. Next week, Wednesday and Friday programs will be after Maghrib Surah.